You guys are a blessing. So giving is receiving. There are a lot of ways to interpret this, a lot of ways this has been used in the world. Most notably, unfortunately, is a form of motivation or bribery. And basically, you know, it's sort of like you give and you'll be given back. You know, you give and you'll be blessed. You know, it's more blessed to give than receive, so I got to give, and that's how I get my blessing. And I had a friend in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he's a guy that I worked with, and he went to I don't think it was a fundamental church, but it was a pretty basic fundamental church. They were having a pledge campaign. And so they were talking about the benefits of tithing. And for those of you who don't know, tithing, as it's been adopted by the church, is the practice of giving 10% of everything that you earn to the church. And the scriptural promise is that whatever you give will be returned tenfold. And when I realized, and I didn't say anything, but it just struck me as kind of funny, either his church or he took this very, very literally. And so he was going on an experiment for 3 months of tithing, giving fully 10% of his gross, not of his net. I mean, he was doing it really by the book. But he was keeping track of what came back. And it seems like we sometimes do that. You know, I've given, what am I going to get? I'm waiting. So first of all, I want to tell you that even in the traditional church thing, it doesn't mean if you give $10, you're going to get $100 back. Somebody's going to give you $100 or whatever. Well, that might happen. It also might mean that you get 10 times worth of something better than the $10. But at any rate, it's used as a way to encourage people to support organizations and institutions. The Course in Miracles line I had us share together before our ceremony here, all that I give is given to myself. That's another key piece for me, because it doesn't mean that, you know, what I give to my friends or my family or my organization or my institution will be given back to me because it will somehow benefit me. It doesn't even mean that when I give, I'll feel so good that I have given, you know, so that's how I receive. It's not even that. Giving is receiving is really only true, and I got to say this, it's only true on the purely spiritual level. See, the truth of giving is receiving cannot be experienced in the world of duality. So here, by the way, when you give, you have less. And what we tell ourselves is that doesn't matter, that's okay, I can afford it. Or I won't miss it anyway, or whatever. But you understand that in the world is when I give, I have less. Now on one level it is true that giving is receiving, even in the world, because I give, you receive. So it doesn't come back to me though. It isn't real to me in this world. The only way we really can experience this is from an experience of oneness, not duality. Brings us to one of my favorite topics, oneness. New thought, unity. I mean, what makes new thought different from old thought is that it believes in oneness. It believes in unity, not in duality. When we talk about the first unity principle, there's only one presence and one power. If you admit it, it really messes with the traditional relationship we have with our world. See, most people see themselves as separate. So when I say there's only one presence and one power, it's sort of like, yeah, it's out there. One presence and one power, someday I'll be there. Or I'm a little piece of it. So most religious people have a very strong faith, a very strong belief, a very strong relationship with God out there. So when unity comes along, it sounds sort of heretical to talk about oneness. I mean, can you imagine what happens, even for you, by the way, for me, I'm not separate, I promise you, if I were suddenly faced with the reality or the consideration that there's no God out there to protect me. There's no God out there looking out for me. There's no God out there handling things. There's no God out there directing everything, making my life work perfectly. There's no God out there judging all those people who do things I don't want to have happen to me. I mean, that really messes us up. We talked this morning. Thank you, Betty. It was a great question. And really, it's an advertisement. Come at 8:30 if you want to have a really good hour before church. It's cool. But the question really that you asked was, where's your go-to place? When you're lost, when you want to remember, when you want to come back to your true self, where do you go? Where's your go-to place? And I want to tell you that when you are lost, when you are feeling separate, God out there is not a bad go-to place. See, what happens is when I am living in the world of duality, then I already am separate from God. So at least if I go to God or good or love out there, it's better to going to other things out there, or better than staying lost. See, in New Thought, it really is all about me. Which means, by the way, it's all about you. All of the separate beings that make up this wonderfully diverse world don't come together as one in God. They have to come together as one in me. In order for me to really totally live the truth of the second unity principle, I have to be absolutely, totally devoid of ego. We all know what's happened to people who have believed the second unity principle egoically. They try to run the world. See, in order to have oneness, there cannot be ego, which is based on separation. The ego, the personality, can have unequal relationships. We know that. I'm better than you, you're better than me, they're better than them, or whatever it is. We can have separate but equal relationships. Yeah, you go do your thing, that's okay with me as long as I get to go do my thing. But the ego is absolutely, totally incapable of having equal relationships, of experiencing oneness. Now, New Thought challenges us to totally change our relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the world. And I find it interesting to remember that New Thought actually came about based on physical healing. New Thought came into being as a better way to heal the body. And physical healing was not only the goal, but it was the barometer of spiritual truth. So I just want you to understand, we're all still working our way out of this separate, egoic personality being at the effect of the world stuff. So we talk a good game, but I just want you to know that we come by the process honestly, because it was entered into as a better way to make duality more palatable. That happens then that a lot of New Thought people are busy wanting to believe the truth. And then in order to prove that they believe the truth, they live the truth, they're telling other people what to believe as if they were already living it themselves. It's not a bad thing. It's just to recognize that we're all in process here. So sometimes we can talk a good game, but you know in your own life when it really is a process of painting over the dry rot so that it looks good. And nothing ever really changes until we recognize that the dry rot is an illusion. Doesn't mean there's not stuff wrong with the world. It means that the world itself is not who we are. So I'm going to shift gears here just a little bit. I want to talk about the role of a minister. And I'm not talking now about the noun minister, which talks about a role or a function. I'm talking about the verb, to minister, which talks about really what it's all about. Dictionary says to attend to the needs of, to take care of, to give aid, to give service. I'm going somewhere with this, so don't forget. You guys have heard, in fact you actually almost mentioned it again this morning, that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. You know, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. You guys all have heard that, right? So I have a preference. I'd rather say that we are spiritual beings experiencing the human condition. Do you understand the difference? The difference there, if I'm experiencing the human condition, I don't own it. I don't identify with it. I don't define myself by it. It's a subtle, semantic difference that makes all the difference in the world. See, if I can experience the human condition, then I can learn from the human condition rather than getting sucked into it. So my job as minister is to be a translator. What I attempt to do, and this is the gift, by the way, that you give me, by saying, you're my minister, or one of them. My job is to consciously experience this world, which means I need to stay aware of what's going on, pay attention to what's going on. And then my joy is to share my understandings and to share my experiences with you from whatever perspective I perceive them. Now, I'm pretty clear about what I know. I'm pretty clear about what's true for me. And I live my life in pretty close integrity with my values. And I'm still learning. And I'm still growing. So I'm talking to me using you as the excuse. Now, I said I'd come back to this minister thing because I want to go back to what Jesus said in the Bible. As Jesus was getting ready to make his final ascension, he gathered around not only his 12 apostles. You know, we think about that. We think about Jesus and the 12 disciples, okay? Well, by the time he was all done, there were way more than just 12 disciples. There were 12 disciples, but he had hundreds of ministers. He had hundreds of people spreading the word. So he gathered together all of his disciples and his ministers, and he said to them, where did he say it? He said, "Go ye therefore and teach every nation." So what I want to tell you guys is, we're all ministers. We aren't each a minister. We're all ministers. We all have a ministry. We all have a service. We all have a lesson to teach, to share. And in this world, you know that the greatest way to teach a lesson is by example. Of course, in Miracles says everything you think, say, and do teaches all the universe. So we get together on Sunday mornings. And I just want to remind us that getting together on Sunday mornings is not only about coming together to feel better, but it's coming together to be better. And not just on Sundays, but so that we can be better every day of our life. That we can live the truth that we would teach the world. That we look at how we're living, what we're doing, what we're saying, and we ask ourselves, is this the way I want my world to be? So I'm going to close with a little summary of a story by Leo Tolstoy. And it's a story of 3 hermits on an island. And the way he describes it in his story is that these hermits were so simple, meaning simple-minded, they were so simple that they only had one prayer that they used. Their prayer was very simple. It was, we are 3, thou art 3, have mercy on us. They would say this prayer all the time, in everything they said and did. And the rumor has it, in the story at any rate, that there were miracles around this little island. Well, at any rate, as things happened, there was a local bishop who heard about these 3 hermits using this really unorthodox, even heretical prayer. And he said, you know, I got to go straighten these guys out. So he gets in the boat and he goes across and gets over to the island, and he's finally going to teach these guys some real proper prayers. So he spends some time teaching these prayers, and he feels really good about himself, a little. Okay? And so he gets in his boat and he heads back to the mainland. Well, about halfway over, he notices there's this huge white light coming right at the back of the boat. And as he gets closer, what he realized, he could see the figures of the 3 hermits, and the 3 hermits are just running as fast as they can across the top of the water, saying, wait, 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 don't go. I've forgotten the prayer that you taught us. Please tell us again. And so Tolstoy says, the bishop humbly replied, continue to live with your old prayer. Now, this story has lots of lessons, and so play with it however you want. But 2 that seem appropriate to me when we look at ourselves as ministers. Number 1, we know what we know. And what we know might be helpful, useful to us in our life. But we don't know what's best for anybody else. And the second thing that I take away from this is that we need to be very, very conscious and aware about when we do or do not allow someone else to tell us how to run our lives. See, sometimes I need to be told. Sometimes I'm doing all right already with my same old prayer. So giving is receiving. And I want to thank you guys for the gift of being invited to minister. And I'm going to hope, guess, pray that all of us receive our gift for ourselves.